From the Green Room Studios at Bates Nursery in Nashville, Tennessee, it's Gardening Inside Out, a podcast with highlights from our Saturday morning live show, answering all your gardening questions, giving you plant advice for any space in your life. Let's start the show.
Hey, everybody. It's Caroline Gant.
Hey, it's Tyler Blankenship.
Hey, it's Ben Trest.
Special guest.
I'm so excited to be here to ask Ben questions because last time he was not, or I was not.
You were gone. He was filling in for
Tyler
you.
was gone. Yeah.
Yep.
It's exciting. It's a first for both of you.
It is. I'm also sitting in a different place. I forgot my microphone. We had a snow break. This past episode, you'll see we were on Zoom.
We were on Zoom, so the audio is a little bit iffy. It's not bad.
It's not iffy.
It's just it's a little different.
I'm just in a different location, and that's throwing you off locationally.
It's weird.
Geospatially.
I'm going to talk about the audio now. I'm talking
Kind of
about
like
the
how when you have a
broadcast.
different accent, when
yes,
you go somewhere
yes.
else, you kind of
Yes.
sound a little differently.
Just like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm picking up the Josh spectrum. I'm over here on Josh's.
You're on Josh's usual microphone, while I'm on David's
guys.
microphone, and Ben is on mine.
That's right.
Musical mics, everybody.
Yeah.
But
well,
Ben, we've got you in studio today.
I'm here.
You're here. What do
Yeah.
you want to talk about?
Well, we've had consistent people planting deciduous trees this time of year, which is great to see.
Which is perfect. People always ask, is it too late?
Yep. And with deciduous trees, there's very, very little risk in transportation and planting right now. But, we still have availability. We have some good-looking trees that we were able to get late season last year that are still looking good. So it's still a good time to plant. We've had a slow trickle of people still planting all winter, which is just great to see. And come springtime, all that work is going to pay off, and you can just sit back and watch it grow.
It's all going to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike if you planted trees in the late spring, you'd have to be watering them all summer.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a smart time to plant. You did some planting.
I did some planting. We had a snow day, and I get the snow day bug. And I grew up in Michigan, so like when I see the snow, I've got to go outside and get in it. And by the time my son Elijah and Katie went inside, I was like, I got to get planting. And they looked at me like I was crazy and left me to it. And
wait. You were out there in the snow planting?
In the snow.
What
Yep.
did you plant?
I
Was this
planted
Friday?
five hornbeam trees.
Was this Friday when it was snowing?
Mm-hmm.
So during the big
Yeah.
snowstorm, Ben was out digging holes.
Yeah. We had 2 inches on the ground, and it was coming. So
What gallon size was it?
probably 5 gallons, 7 gallon size. So it was
No,
nice. on a
fairly
little
decent
hillside.
size holes. I'm impressed.
And the ground was okay, but it was when I went to take the plants out of it and I was hammering it off the roots and went to rough up the roots a little bit, and it was sheer ice on the outside of those root balls. So in the ground they went
So I'm sure they'll be
To
great.
warm up.
to warm up. But yeah, the next day I went out and the soil was soft. Everything was soft and workable. So it was funny how quick the ground insulated these plants.
And then the snow's going to melt and water it slowly.
Yeah, I'll probably have to go back out and pack it in a little bit. Went back and re-roughed the roots up, but they should be okay. I mean, even though they were little icicles in their pots, I bet you every single one of them does fine.
They're warm little nuggets in the ground now.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy the cold while you were working? Did it like cool you down as you were digging?
Yes and no. I feel like when you've got layers on, all of a sudden your temperature just boils.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you shed all your layers and you're like, okay, I'm comfortable. And you're like, oh, it's cold. So it's kind of a...
So you were bouncing back and
yeah,
forth.
it's kind of a juggling act with layers and clothing. And yeah, get 2 trees in and you get overheated.
Yeah, I was outside for a second and like the drops, or the snowflakes turned into droplets very quickly on my head. When I came back in, it was like I had taken a shower because it had all just like melted right into my hair and I
Yep.
didn't notice it. And I noticed that we were right around the freezing mark, so I think it even went up to 33 at one point during the day. And like, so it was kind of melty out there.
It was gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, once your hands get wet, that's when it's a
That's
problem.
when it's-
That's the tough thing with planting in the winter is
Did your
you
hands get wet?
You get your gloves wet.
Yeah.
And then
You're very uncomfortable.
kind of miserable.
Your
yeah.
hands are freezing. I'm pretty blown away that you did that, though.
Yeah.
Don't get hypothermia planting in January.
I don't think
protect
most people are
yourself.
going to go plant in a snowstorm. I think you're a rare bird with that one.
I'm glad you proved it though. I'm impressed and
But
inspired.
marking the holes was easy because I just drew it in the snow.
Oh,
Brilliant.
Ben, more people need to be like Ben.
I was like, it's worth it. I don't have to use little flags.
I should have gotten out there, but I did. I went outside and took a walk. I walked through my woods, but I have a bunch of stuff in my driveway right now that still needs to be planted.
That's one thing we talked about on the show was the snow on the boughs of branches and things like that completely changes the character of it. It's so cool to observe, and it's also something that when you plant something, you can definitely consider as it matures later on, adding to your landscape value.
Yeah, definitely.
Ben, did you plant anything else earlier this winter? Like, is that been like kind of the main event?
Planted a fruit tree, planted an Asian pear.
For
Excited
you,
about
right?
that.
Yeah.
For me.
Mm-hmm.
Planted an Asian pear. I planted a few other things, but
You're very good at planting stuff as soon as you get it home.
I get excited.
Whereas myself, and I know Austin's pretty bad about this. Tyler, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
the two of us tend to get plants and then get them home. We have big idea people, you know.
Well, I don't usually plan beforehand. This most recent planting of the switchgrass alongside...
You were on it with that one.
That was planned and executed fairly quickly for me. And my next thing is doing laurels along my fence line, which
Stunning.
they're in place, but they're not anywhere.
But those are like 15-gallon pots,
they're
right?
huge. They're really big, and then I've got to rent like a mini X or something because I need to remove this gravel infused weedy soil.
Oh.
It's terrible, and I'm also kind of thinking like it's a little downslope for my driveway, and I'm like, what if I made it into sort of like a rain bed, and it would just absorb that extra watery runoff and then help keep things watered. So I'm like, okay, now I'm in the process of calculating how deep I need to amend with the right material to absorb that.
Yeah.
Well, and you could use some of that gravelly soil, depending on how bad it is. You may be able to use it down slope.
That's a good idea too. I might, I mean, I certainly don't have a dump truck or a truck to haul it off, so I just have to make it work.
You've got trucks you can borrow, though.
Yeah.
We've got trucks on hand. That's going to look good. When are you going to do it?
This winter, I told myself, this is kind of a soft rule, not really a hard rule, but if I don't have anything of what I recently got planted by the time spring comes around and things warm up, then I need to get rid of it.
Wow. I would have to throw away
You're
a lot of stuff.
not gonna cave in and pay someone to come out and plant it whenever, give up all hope.
I guess I could
like
do
handyman
that.
Project.
See, I didn't even register that in my mind. I'm like, I have to do it all.
I have to get this in the ground.
So that could be a possibility. Ben, you doing anything?
We'll see whenever you give up on it.
Yeah, I know.
I'll give you time. You can do this.
I think I can. For me, it's like limited amount of space. I have a 1/4 acre, and I want things to be in the right place, the right time. I don't like digging things up and transplanting them all the time.
Yeah.
So I have an idea for a sweet bay magnolia I got. I'm going to take out a flagpole, but I obviously need to orchestrate when I have the mini X, so then I can do both of those things at the same time.
Yep.
So I'm a big planner and a big overthinker.
That's not a bad thing.
No.
I am the opposite.
Yeah. But you have
Non-planner and underthinker.
Yeah, but you have these
I
organic wild places. It's almost like a reserve for the plants to put in other places later, you know?
True. I am
You've
getting better
probably
at
got
planning.
the most diverse sunlight and space out of anybody.
I do. I will say I've got all the way to full all-day hot sun to deep, deep shade and everywhere in between. So I can plant almost anything at my house until I run out of space, which will happen probably fairly soon-ish, at least close to my house to where I can see it.
It'd be fun.
I don't know. I've got a lot of plants to plant right now. I need to plan it out, though. I had a notebook, and I was writing what I have and where I want to put it. So I am getting better at planning. Now, planting, I don't know about that.
Well, that's what I talk myself out of the plant to not even take it home. I'll talk myself out of a plant for a year, and then finally I'm like, I'm going to plant it today, so I'm going to buy it.
Oh, that's smart. You just think on it, and then you're like, today's the day. I'm going to get it. See, I always get worried that we're like never going to get it in again.
Well,
or
that
it's
ship
going to go
sails all
way
the
up
time,
in
and I'm like,
price.
dang it, I missed it.
Yeah.
So
I've missed a
then
lot, but then I've had to pay like $20 more to get a plant I wanted 2 years ago.
It's the price you get to
So
pay.
for me, it's stress. It's the anxiety of having to pay more money or losing out.
Sometimes they look better. Sometimes you get a better one, so something else comes around. And there's a lot of plants out there.
There's
So you can
tons.
find something and you might fall in love with something else.
Yeah.
So maybe this is like Zen or something, Ben. Then if you skip a plant that's not available very often and it won't come back for 2 years, are you completely okay with it just not having it for that span of time?
I usually envision a space where I want something and I don't know what it is. So, if something else comes along that fits into that space, I'm okay with it. I'm usually not set on, I got to have this one.
So you have like a range.
Where I've got options. I'm kind of like, I'd like
things.
this, but it could fit a few different substitutes in my mind. So if something else comes along that fits that,
then you could go with that.
I said there's so many things. Something else is going to come
There
along.
is so much.
I'm
and
sure it's the
there's
same with
always new
houseplants. You'd be like,
coming
oh,
along.
well, I
Now,
need that.
I will say I'm very good at not overbuying houseplants at this point. It's the outdoor plants that get me now.
Yeah, I vibe with that. I just don't have any space.
Yeah.
Like, we have
houseplants
them
for me,
all-
it's money. You got to get the pot,
I have so many pots at this
Yeah.
point because I've thrown away a lot of plants. Actually, during our snow, I went through and just threw out a bunch of houseplants that were not healthy or needed too much care. If you're listening right now, don't judge me. I've been holding on to these plants forever, and it was their time to be buried.
I do kind of think if a plant doesn't work out and it was in a container, that's just an opportunity for that container to have another friend,
To have a new...
And I actually have one recent one that died, and I think it was my tomato experiment. Yeah. All that,
The tomato saga.
3 celebrities in a pot that produced 1 tomato.
Did you hear
maybe
about
2.
that, Ben?
Three fused into one. Is this like
No, it was just I planted 3 starts in 1 pot,
And he got 1 tomato.
but I got 1 tomato out of it. Actually got way more tomatoes out of my raised bed, or I put a couple more in there. So I think it was a 6-pack that I got, maybe. Anyway,
Yeah.
so and the ones that did produce were good, but that pot is now free again.
So you
It
can
is
get
liberated
something
to put something else in.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that kind of not adding pots, but using what I have and rotating it
Like a hermit crab.
based on things that suck.
now? Realistically, how long have you left a plant carcass in a pot? Come on,
Oh.
3 years.
I'm at least 3 years.
6 months.
Wow. I've had dead plants and pots for a long time.
Yeah,
Usually not more than a season for me because I know that something can be reused and I already have something that I want to replace it with.
Yeah.
I've had an ugly juniper struggling in a pot for years before, and I'm like, it's still alive.
I have an ugly
It's
juniper in a pot right
ugly.
now.
Not ugly.
It's hanging
It's
in there,
miserable.
though. Sometimes I just feel so bad about throwing plants away. I'm like, but you're still alive. But then you know what? It feels good when you finally, cut it out when you
Yeah.
do it. You're kind of the king of junipers because you have so many deer
Yeah.
that get into your landscaping.
Yep.
So you've got a lot of juniper,
All my pretty
aster,
stuff has a very
yucca.
small area to be in, so I'm kind of thinking real carefully about backyard fenced in. With deer, I'm doing big trees, anything bigger than like 7-8 foot, so I can protect it from them.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what's your biggest thing with deer that you've learned?
Don't give them a shot. I mean, just as soon as you don't wait to protect your plants, because if you wait,
Oh, yeah.
they will find it that day, that night.
You'll wake up and it'll be.
Yeah, if you don't try to protect that tree within 24, 48 hours and it's susceptible at all,
There it is.
sorry, they're going to get it. And I've had them get trees and they damaged it and the tree will be fine, but, you wait too long. I wasn't going to protect I've got a pond cypress, a rise and fall, and it's got a good 3.5 inch caliper trunk on it. I was like, it'll be fine. And then some
Other trees
deer
in the
started
neighborhood.
kind of nibbling at it a little bit and rubbing and nibbling, and I was like, oh, got to protect it. So
And you got it it's okay now.
that'll be
Okay,
fine.
good. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite. That is one of my wish list plants.
Now
I
here in a
don't have
couple
one of
years, it won't fit a trunk protector, and it'll just have to be on its own. But
But it'll be stronger and
Oh, yeah.
bigger and
Oh, yeah.
ready to face those
Yeah.
those deer.
once it's the size of your leg, I think it'll be fine.
I was going to say, how long do you know? So that would be what, like 3 to 5 years? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, once it gets maybe 3 years, 4 years in the ground, it's actually got a root system that'll handle all that rubbing, stuff like that. So yeah,
So it'll be okay then.
don't give them an inch
Don't you dare.
because they'll take it.
If you get a new tree, go ahead
Yeah.
and protect it.
Well, I've got buttonbush that I've had in the ground for 4 years with a fence around it. So this is like a 6-foot wide fence around a huge. I mean, it's a huge buttonbush.
You fenced in buttonbush?
Down near my creek, and
Do deer eat that? Probably. They'll eat anything.
I think they will. But that thing did great this past year. It bloomed for a month or more. It bloomed
I
really
love
heavily
blooms on buttonbush.
and it's going to seed. So I'm hoping we'll get little baby buttons around. And,
Little baby buttons.
but I'm like, should I take the fence off? I mean, it's. Or are they just?
It's a 6-foot wide fence.
It's 6 foot wide. The plant's probably about 5 foot tall. The buttonbush.
Yeah.
It's been in the ground for like 2 years.
That sounds mature enough to me, but also, like...
You never know, though.
How many stems does it have?
Well, I don't know. It's just a big
old shrubby
round
guy.
shrub. Yep.
I want you to take it off to test it, but then I don't want you to be like, Caroline, the deer came and ate all my blooms off last night.
Can you go halfsies or something?
Yeah, maybe. I'll just fence half of it.
Yeah.
That'll be a good look. That'll be something new.
Yeah.
The half that faces away from your house,
Yeah.
so you don't have to see it in case something happens.
I have a button bush to plant. I'm excited.
Yeah.
That's a great plant.
It took it about a year, and then this past year, it just bloomed so heavy. It was so pretty.
And you have yours in a wet spot because you have a little
Super
creek that
wet.
runs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've got some itea, and I know the deer will just go after it.
You gave me an itea for my birthday one year. I've got that.
But
I
they'll
love
probably
that
eat it to the
plant.
ground, and it'll just
Come right back
up.
up. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Still testing the waters on that, but good tall trees to start out with.
Mm-hmm.
It's real nice.
Deer. Can't live with them. Can't live without them.
Yeah, I just love probing Ben's knowledge about this because, he has so much experience compared to all of us. And I know that Adam also has some and advice too, but you've actively been experimenting. So I love to hear the
You've
Well,
got
and if
the
you drive around
first-hand
the
knowledge.
neighborhoods, you can tell. If you start knowing what to look for, you can see the neighborhoods that have like a deer issue
Yeah.
It's obvious.
because the landscapes are a certain way.
Yeah, some of the parks around Nashville, you can see if there's like a field that meets a tree line.
Sure.
You could see where it's been gnawed up to where they and it's like completely bald, that little
Everything will have
feet.
6-foot trunks on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deer. Luckily, I don't have to deal with that too much out where I am. I think because they got the woods.
All the arborvitae
That's
will have.
surprising still though. I feel like sometimes just to be spiteful they come into your stuff and
One time I had said something last year about I love heuchera, and watermelon heuchera is my favorite. And I was talking to some fellow coworkers here at the nursery about how deer never really mess with any of my plants. And then I showed a picture of my watermelon heuchera and was like, isn't this stunning? I kid you not. The next morning I woke up, I was walking to my car and I was like, what? And I walked over and it looked like a deer had just taken a huge bite out of the middle, which was pretty much the entire plant, and then spit it out.
No.
Or one of my coworkers went to my house in the middle of the night, took a pair of scissors and gave it a haircut.
No.
That definitely
Nobody got
wasn't
time
it.
for that.
Yeah. But
Oh, I've seen them do
other
that to
than that,
heuchera.
I don't really
Yep.
have a lot of, again, because it's heavily wooded around my house.
But if it was
so.
in the ground for 2 months, they probably wouldn't have done that. They probably would have tried it,
And then they would
spit
have
it
been
out.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah, he just bit it and then spit it out. Leaves
Yeah.
everywhere. Didn't even swallow it. What a monster.
Yeah. I've seen them do it to like
An
a whole planting
absolute
bed.
monster. Really?
Ripping them out of the ground. Yeah.
Oh, I've seen that.
Sometimes if you get it, you can just stick them right back in the ground and say, hey,
Where
better
they're
luck
just
next
all-
time.
Oops,
all
sorry.
uprooted.
Yep.
But the critter issue, that's something we all deal with. I mean, I've had armadillos, I've had stuff like burrowing. So, I might not have deer, but I have something. I feel like us as gardeners always have some kind of critter issue.
And then vegetable
Chipmunks,
crops are a whole nother.
Tyler and his squirrel.
Yeah. I really cooked up a disruption to the squirrel highway. They've already figured out a way around it now. But I cut
What
into
was
this.
it?
Well, there's this really massive kind of unbridled privet that is at the
Oh,
very
gross.
back corner. Yeah, and honeysuckle. And I used my pole saw and I got as far over the fence because there's nobody who lives at this house. It's just neglected. And I just cut a huge amount out of the privet and even some of my cedar branches because that's how they're doing it. They're like running just evenly across it. But it wasn't enough of a gap to make a difference.
They just take a little leap.
Yeah, they'll either leap down on the fence earlier or they'll go up higher up where there's still some touchy things and jump.
So they're still getting you.
Yeah, and so you got to retool your fruit calculus there, and
Part of
just
it might be that you have the
pay more
food.
attention.
I've got walnut trees and oaks that they just go crazy for. It keeps them well
Yeah.
fed, so they don't really go after
Yeah,
my stuff as much unless it's like right on the fence.
Yes, my gold raspberry is right at the back of my house, and I do have a black walnut that's kind of like towards the back of my fence. So yeah, that is one thing that's less messed with is that raspberry.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things though, like the blueberries and strawberries that if you don't cover them, it's a mess.
Yeah. A massacre, if you will.
A massacre.
A massacre.
Usually is, especially if a bird gets in there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll just cause it. It'll just move in that raspberry bush, going crazy, plucking them, and you'll go and it's all like half eaten.
Yes, I'm starting to fight
They're very
the
wasteful.
mockingbirds on these.
Tyler's already dreading spring and summer now. I can see it over there.
No, I get little snacks. I'm fine. Nothing.
I'm just kidding.
You just need to go out there occasionally with like a hawk costume. Just go out there and just
Just flap those wings, scare them
I'll
off.
pull it out of my closet, Ben. It'll be great.
You would have a hawk costume. That would be cool. But you know what else is cool?
Getting on to the show.
Getting on to the show. So let's go ahead and get into the Snow Day Zoom broadcast.
Yeah, it was wild. We worked with what we got.
We did, and and we did great.
Yeah, we did. All things considered, and we'll be back to mostly normal the next Saturday. So
Yes, we will.
tune
So-
in live if you can. If not, listen on the podcast like you are right now.
And thank you for listening. Enjoy.
thanks, y'all.
This is I
Your
had to share
Crossvine.
my Crossvine because I'm on Team Crossvine, and I know
Is
that
it-
battle was settled as we all recapped in the New Year's episode. But that color is just so beautiful.
And this is really a great example of why it is a wonderful vine. You know, you get great winter color, winter interest, in addition to the green and that purplish magenta backside of the leaf. It's a nice contrast with the snow on there. So
Yep, and
wonderful.
that's great use of welded wire 2x4 squares too, buddy, my friend.
Oh yeah,
Isn't that a great trellis? I mean,
yeah.
really.
It really does well for just about anything climbing. I grew beans on it. I mean, right now this crossvine is over the top of it. It's an old bed frame, metal bed frame for the top,
Oh,
and then
wow.
I bolted 2x4s to where the legs would normally attach. So and then anchored that in the ground. That's been going for 4 years now.
Yeah, and David noticed the proper staple placement right there in the corners.
Absolutely.
Perfect, man. I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
So a great example of proper carpentry and wire attachment skills.
Yep. And it lasts.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Really
Love
is.
it.
You know, and really, in all seriousness, we talked about this, this debate between Bignonia and the clematis. The crossvine is such a great type of a vining plant in that, and it's not a rapid grower.
Nope.
It's plenty sufficient, but it's not something that is extremely rapid. It keeps chugging along, and the great thing about it is there's minimal interaction you ever have to do with it. You're not going to have to fight that thing years down the line. You've had that one in there, would you say 4 years, Tyler?
Mhm.
The crossvine,
Yeah.
about I think it's going on its third or fourth year now.
Trellis was 4 years.
So it's going year 3.
But even at that, there are a great many type of clematis or clematis. If you prefer,
Clematis.
it would have completely overgrown.
Clematis?
That's Colin. That's what he calls it. Clematis.
Tyler, that's gorgeous. You know I love Crossvine.
Really does.
I'm proud of
Yeah,
you.
great example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Pam Eldridge, Tyler says, love these. I had a eucalyptus that lived for about 7 years.
Wow.
Good job, Pam.
Yeah.
Eucalyptus can be tricky to keep alive, especially if you bring it inside. So,
I mean, this, I'm fully expecting this to get maybe, if it survives this winter, 10, 15 feet tall.
you're going to have a tree.
Now,
Because
that cultivar is
naturally
listed as
they
being
get
hardy to
30.
what?
Hardy to about this temperature, maybe like zero to negative 10.
I think Glacier's hardy to about 0.
0.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're right on the line from where you might reasonably expect success with it. But that's part of the fun of gardening is being able to try to find plants that you may be able to stretch the boundaries on,
Hmm.
not, and I think one of the things we try to talk to and speak to here on the program is that not everything you're going to do in gardening is going to be successful. But because you have things that don't work out as you hope, it doesn't mean it's a failure either. There's the information you can gain from that. There are maybe additional preparations that perhaps you overlooked, and some of those things are with respect to freeze tolerance, but it's also moisture, and uh, perhaps it's just not spending the time to get the right plant in the right place. So it's very important to gather as much information as you can, and the best gardeners are meticulous note takers, and that makes me inherently not the best
Uh-oh.
gardener because I do take mental notes, but those are much less reliable in the last years. So for the record, that thing that used to work really well, not nearly as much anymore.
I resemble that.
So anyway, write things down if you really want to keep a permanent record of it.
Save your tags too. I always save my tags.
Yeah, saving your tags is a great idea. I have a little notebook that I put my tags in and notes on plants
Hmm.
that
And when you're coming out to the nursery to visit, take your smartphone and take pictures of tags. Please don't pull them off
No.
because other people who are buying those need to get that tag with it. So occasionally some people do that. That's a very small amount, but uh, it does take away from that opportunity for the person who's
It's
buying it
tough
to be
on,
able to get that hard copy of information.
and it's hard to maintain inventory control out on the lot, I would
Well,
imagine.
yes, we like to be able to scan those items, and
Yeah.
it is a very correct identifier, and we need
Mm-hmm.
to have that information. So I know you got questions,
we
Caroline.
have questions. I was just about to say, let's get to some. So our first question is, should we shake snow off of green giants and other plants, or are there any other plants we should do, excuse me, this for? So, should snow be shaken from plants?
Well, I mean, I think Tyler's already answered that question.
He
It's
did. He talked
exactly
about
what he
that
did with
eucalyptus.
his eucalyptus, and that same applies to whatever that you've got. The concern will be is that this weighted uh, addition to the foliage, it does splay it out or bend it over in the case of that eucalyptus. So if it's an arborvitae, you're going to get this kind of laying out effect. Boxwoods can also be bad for that if they're not tightly sheared. So giving them a good shake, particularly once the temperatures are just above freezing, where it will dislodge rather easily. So you can take two hands with sleeves and gloves on and shake that
Nah,
out of there.
go
Oh
out
yeah.
there. Yeah, no. Go down to the t-shirt and shake it off, man. That's the way you
You
got to
do
do
That
that,
it.
Josh.
sounds
Oh.
terrible, Josh.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of people doing that this morning in particular.
It's really fun if you got somebody like a little kid or your wife and you're out there underneath the tree canopy and you shake the tree and it falls down on top of their head. That's when it gets good.
That's gonna make people really happy. I accidentally slapped Austin in the face with an icy juniper branch
I
a
was
couple of years
there.
back. I think it's in our blooper reel, one of them.
Hmm.
It was supposed to just be like a little, like you
Looking at it
talked
like
about.
a face full.
I mean,
Yeah,
the ice
just a
just
whole branch.
flung off into his face. Yeah.
We'll find that clip and we'll get it up soon. All right,
So,
let's go ahead and move to another question. What's the best purple or blue flower for direct sun to plant?
Oh,
My
What's
favorite
your
is gonna be
thought?
Stokefaster. That is my absolute favorite, like purple blue plant. Full sun, its leaves stay up through the winter. It's really, really clean. And the flower actually opens during the day and closes at night and stays in bloom for quite a while. So that would be my top suggestion.
For a seasonal flowering thing, azaleas, and I will I will put this out there in the memory of we had a horticultural loss and a really major loss this week. Duncan Callicott passed away,
Oh
who was
my.
a longtime landscape architect and a friend to many. What a great guy Duncan was. He passed away this past week. But one of the things that I know personally from being in Duncan's garden was Puccinense azaleas. And Puccinense has this lavender purple color flower, and it's kind of a mid-season bloomer, so you don't typically get problems with respect to maybe a late frost or freeze getting it. One of the best attributes of that, and this is the point that Duncan was showing me when some years ago when we were in his garden, is that it is completely deer resistant. They won't touch it. It has a bit of a fragrance, something that the deer do not like. So if you have an area that perhaps is an eastern exposure and you're thinking about planting azaleas, it's a great plant. It's a good looking plant, even when it's not in bloom. And if you live in areas that are heavily populated with deer, and I don't really know who lives in such an area, but they're everywhere. It's a good choice to make. Not a repeat bloomer, but it blooms profusely on its single flowering time mid-season. Puccinense or Puccinense compacta, which is my personal favorite. It's a little more dense growing with less trimming required. So that's the one I like.
What about irises? Some of the bearded irises are actually beautiful
Absolutely.
blue. Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
Fake
Aster,
flower.
Asters.
salvia. Those are two great blooming, kind of that give you blooms throughout the spring and summer and into the fall. So those would be good.
And the point is that there are really quite a lot of different things to choose from when it comes to purple flowers, from rhododendron, which are probably on the toughest end of the scale to grow, because they just have quite a lot of problems, to things that are decidedly less so. There are things. Buddleia, for instance, that have some great purple flowers that are quite easy to grow. And the development of more compact growing cultivars in the last years really has enhanced the viability of that. Is, 15 years ago, they got to be way too big, way too fast. We've done a lot of great work, those who do the breeding and genetic work on those, getting those into much more compact and more manageable forms where you have a thick cluster of flowers that do a lot to keep all that within bounds and to make it work really well in the gardens that we tend to have in this day and time, which are we just don't have the amount of available space that we did, say 20 years ago. People's yards are getting smaller, or they're even having to go to the container form of it.
Gardening Inside Out is brought to you by Earth Mix Garden Products, creating regionally sourced high-quality soil blends and amendments for the sustainable-minded gardener. Fall and winter are great times to plant in the Southeast, and Earth Mix can help you with Landscape Soil Conditioner. Mix landscape with your native soil to feed all winter long. Added mycorrhizal fungi help your plants get established faster and increase hardiness through the year ahead. Visit earthmix.net for more information and retailers near you. Remember, success begins at the ground level when you use Earth Mix Garden Products. Tyler,
Like I said, goat.
Oh, you have it in there.
I brought the board home with me, y'all. But
What's the goat? What's the goat?
I mean,
what is the goat?
What is the goat? I'm looking out my window and I see two beautiful redbuds covered with snow. They
Ooh.
are absolutely gorgeous too.
That sounds stunning.
I
would say my Nootka Weeping Alaskan Cedar is the goat right now that I have planted in my front yard. That was my Christmas tree 2 years ago. That would be my goat plant right now. It's gorgeous in the snow. It's, looks very wintry. Wish I had a photo of it, but I don't.
Okay.
I have to say, Austin has forcefully opinionated on me many plants. And the ones that he has have done really well for me. And I would say my Amsonia Blue Star is really one of the stars of the show. Unfortunately, in winter, not so much, but really the fall color, it's just this brushy yellow bush. It makes me feel happy for some reason because it's just so fluffy and upright. And when you have so many of them planted together, it's just like a yellow cloud that's on the ground. Not to mention the blooms in the spring, which are first. You'll see those, and then the rest of the foliage comes in. So that's my goat plant.
Tyler, that's also a blue flowering plant, like our question earlier.
Yeah, and native.
Absolutely.
And
native.
It'll take a good
and
bit of sun.
Bridget's favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So awesome. So
Sam
do you
says-
still have more questions out there in the queue, Caroline?
We do. I was waiting on your goat plant, David. Do you not have a favorite?
Me, there are a lot of great things out there, and we sell a lot of them. And I don't know if I've got one that just really let me ponder on that. There's one that is kind of a plant that is a shade-loving plant that really doesn't get a lot of notoriety. It it really doesn't have a showy flower on it, but it can produce some red berried fruit is an akuba. And as a shade plant, I really like that because it will work in heavy shade situations where few other things do. And if it does get cold enough where it gets frozen down to the ground, it'll come back up because the roots really seem to survive. So, as far as a plant that I think really deserves more credit than it's given, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. All
That's a
right,
shade.
now we can move on to the next question.
Okay.
All right. What type of soil should I use to pot bare root peonies? And what is the ideal planting depth?
I'd probably use garden.
I would use landscape. That would be
you?
my go-to. Mhm.
Okay.
Landscape is
garden-
what I use for a lot of my potted plants.
And to Caroline's point, garden has twice the native soil in it that Proganics O does.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it doesn't perk quite as well. So if you have drainage hole stoppage issues that occur, that will exacerbate that because it's got more sediment that can filter out and plug those holes. So that's a good point with regard to that. As far as the height to plant, if you're bare rooting peonies, you're only going to want to bury those eyes down just a few inches below the surface. So hopefully you've got enough mass of soil there to be able to maintain that those tubers through the winter months. It's a possibility that they could freeze out over the winter in a container, although it's not real likely. Again, and one of the things we talk about from time to time, we've got no severe cold weather coming up in the forecast. So it's not applicable for the near future. But if you've got container things, and it really doesn't matter what it is, make sure you soak them thoroughly just prior to going into the cold weather, and then immediately thereafter when they thaw out. And I know it's counterintuitive. You think, well, isn't the water going to freeze? Yes, but that's not the point. The point is you want to try to fill the pore spaces in the soil with a liquid as opposed to a gas, which is what air is.
Yes.
And it slows down the change of temperature, how quickly that happens. It also provides essential moisture for plants that are perhaps going to desiccate or dry out the root system due to this freeze-thaw cycle. So by doing that, you provide some additional insulation within the soil.
Yeah,
So
but let's get the proper size container as well, because those peonies tend to get a little leggy and get a little tall as well. So I mean, you're gonna have to have. I've got containers of like welded wire around mine for this next year because they got a bit leggy last year.
Did
yeah,
they?
and
Just
I feel like
small.
mine never get leggy.
Well, they get they where mine are is when the thunderstorms hit them is when they tend to flop real hard,
Oh, gotcha.
and they're
Yep.
growing through them. So I mean, it's pretty
It
cool.
also is a great case for using Ito peonies, which are a
Ito.
cross between a tree peony and an herbaceous peony. And because of that, they don't flop. They're really very
Mm.
much more disease resistant. They don't get the foliar issues nearly as much. They do cost quite a lot more, but they're much lower maintenance. And if I were choosing one for a container that I was going to buy, I would consider that.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
definitely. Like you said, they stay like cleaner and stronger, but the throughout the season, like my regular herbaceous peonies, they start to get fungal issues and the leaves start to burn and they start to kind of flop a little bit, but my Itos stay upright until like the first frost when
yep.
they get taken out. So the foliage on those actually looks way better than the others. So I'd say it's
Hmm.
well worth it for that, extra 20 to $40 that you pay for
Yeah,
one.
yeah, they're not cheap, but they are one of the plants. And going back to the
Stunning.
question, there's so many plants to think of, but the Ito peonies are one of those things that they spent 20 years developing before they've successfully stabilized this cross. And it's one of those I will I will say very candidly that the overwhelming majority of new introductions of horticultural are not really all that spectacular. There are many of the old tried and true varieties that are better, but Ito peonies is one that Mr.
You got it
Ito
right.
himself worked on for a long time, and he did isolate some. I think it was a half dozen originally. They've gotten more since then through tissue cultures. Keep that hand warm there, Tyler. We don't want you get that heater turned up there.
I'm
We
not
don't
on
want
No,
to get
screen, David.
we can't. We
it's on
don't.
my
Okay.
screen.
I'm sorry. He's got himself turned off. I'm watching him. Nobody else is.
But that's another reason that part of these plants are so expensive is the development time that it takes to go on with it. For 20 years, you're crossing with scientists and biologists and manufacturing and growing facilities. I mean, and it was developed in Japan, wasn't it, or was it out in Oregon? We had the
I,
gentleman that was
I
involved with
believe
that.
Mr. Ito, I mean, obviously he's of Japanese origin.
Right.
I think it may have started out there. I want to say that he came to the Pacific Northwest,
Okay.
uh, but I'm not going to bet any amount of money on the validity of those facts, but only
Hmm.
that he did spend about 20 years. So that's a great plant, one of those that is not overhyped.
Hmm.
It's legitimate. So
It
there's
Absolutely.
is.
that.
Everybody needs some in pots in the ground, wherever. Give them lots of sun. Hey, we got a live question and comment in from Joan Dotson. Joan says, happy to see Tyler, Caroline, and Austin last Saturday. It was wonderful to see you when you came here to get irises. Even happier to get some great deals on bulbs. Question, should I put my iris bulbs in the ground now or wait until spring?
27 more minutes, and then you can go put them in. It's a little,
Yeah, it's a little, you may have a little snow layer to dig through. You
yeah,
might wait on next
good
week.
soil moisture. I mean, good soil moisture. If you
That's
think about
true. It's going
that.
to melt and then water those. Yep.
Mhm.
So it certainly won't, it will neither hurt to do it now as soon as conditions get favorable to plant, nor will it be worrisome to wait. They just need to be kept in a cool, dry place. In a basement is really excellent, and just let them lie dormant until it's time to get them in the ground. So there's no
Mhm.
particular urgency on that. You could wait 2 months before you got those in if you had them stored properly. Uh, or you could go ahead and go on with it. The part of the concern, if you're going to plant them now, is that do you understand the percolation of the soil in the area you're planting them in? You don't want them to be in a spot that
Nope.
tends to dry slowly, because with anything that's a tuber or like that, they don't want to be in a wet foot situation. Iris are not particularly susceptible to wet feet, but if it was on a spot that stood in
Stayed
water for a
wet.
long period of time, it could be a problem.
Very good.
Yes, it could. Hey, Joyce Hook says Ito peonies are expensive but worth it in all caps.
She
Yep.
also said that her goat today is hellebores blooming in snow. You got
Oh,
that right.
100%.
Yep.
yeah. That one is the best. Hey, we got a question. Let's find that one. What are some plants that bloom the earliest? I would say hellebore would be one of the top plants.
Absolutely.
It is, and Josh
My
has in his yard. He has witch hazel. Do you not
yes,
have a Diane witch hazel growing
we
in your?
do have a Diane. Yeah, and
That one's like the earliest. My paper bush, that one already has cute little buds that look like little snowdrops or something. And
mhm.
that'll start blooming really late winter, early spring.
Forsythia.
Arnold's Promise witch hazel was the most widely. Uh, it's the kind of the original one, so it's the most. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, Tyler.
I was just saying Forsythia is another one that blooms early.
It is,
That one is gorgeous.
and winter jasmine.
Yes.
Hence the
Hmm.
name winter in there. You'll see that those in bloom frequently when there is snow on the ground. So they now they don't bloom a long time, and
Showy.
they're not so abundant in flowers that they make a stunning show. But you do get that uh, yellow flower against the bright green stems, so
Gorgeous.
that even without foliage on there, they still show up and show up very nicely in the garden. See them used uh, very well along and draping over rock walls and that kind of thing. They have an arching
Mhm.
growth habit to the branches.
Wonderful. Hey, Helen is asking on our Facebook page, I would like to plant a Japanese maple in my backyard this year. Which variety do you recommend I consider for a full sun area?
Ooh. Blood good?
I've got a Katsura Japanese maple in full sun, and it's gorgeous. In the spring and early summer, it does great. Now it does get a little bit of leaf burn, starting in July through the rest of the summer. So I wouldn't say it's super ideal for it, but it can handle full sun. It's in sun from morning to night,
I
and it.
think Emperor One is generally considered to be the most sun and heat tolerant of all cultivars. It will resemble bloodgood, pardon me, in growth habit and overall look, but it doesn't get scorched by the sun. So if you have it in a more south or westerly exposure, it'll tend to fare better than other cultivars will.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Getting back to our questions. Hold on. I have so many screens that I'm switching between right now. All right, when is the best time to sow seeds? They ask May, question mark. I mean, it kind of depends on what seeds you're sowing, I would
Josh,
say.
you've got this one.
3:30.
Yeah, there
There's the
you
answer.
go.
Sow them at 3:30.
Yeah, and I actually had Josh. I had a question from over the past week from our buddy Jim Stevens
Oh
out of
yeah.
Cleveland, Ohio. He was wanting to do some overseeding up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I assured him it's a little early.
Early.
You need
Mhm.
to wait on that one just a bit. And it not only is true for Cleveland, Ohio, but even Nashville and much further south than we are here. There's no particular rush on getting that done. At this point in time, you need to be thinking spring germination, not in terms of, fall is already done. So we're well into winter now.
Now, David,
So you'd be, depending on where you are geographically, I would say in Middle Tennessee area, sometime in the latter part of February into mid-March is really an optimal time. What you don't want to do is to have that seed lying on the ground where it might rot if you
mm,
had a really wet period or the conditions are just a little too cool for germination. You could lose a good portion of that seed, if not all of it, if it is
sits
not
there
in
too long.
impeccable germination conditions.
Uh-huh.
So wait till you start getting warmer days and you have reasonable expectation for the soil temperature to warm that seed enough to be able to get germination relatively quickly, hopefully within 7 to 10 days, perhaps as much as 2 weeks. But you really don't want to go beyond that because the other thing you run into with springtime germination is unlike the fall where the conditions tend to be getting a little nicer. In the springtime, it's getting warmer, but you're having less frequent rains oftentimes. So that can work against you as well. If you can time it just right, you don't have to do anything. If you time it wrong, you may get it germinated and have to do a lot of supplemental watering with a sprinkler in order to keep that grass going until the roots get established well enough to get you on through the season.
In
Well, Jim's
many
probably go ahead.
on many seed packets, you'll also see the little color coded bands of when to plant and then also when to sow for fall if applicable or spring. And usually it's 2 to 4 or 4 to 6 weeks before the either first or last frost.
Well, Jim's probably growing rye up there in that grass anyway, don't you think, David? I mean, it's probably not
That was my suspicion. He didn't say specifically, but
because
yes,
he didn't know. Yeah,
correct.
yeah. But so I mean, that's going to change it a little bit because if they get any warm weather at all up there, which is unlikely, so it's going to see what's going on with it. But let it roll.
Additional support for Gardening Inside Out is brought to you by Bates Nursery and Garden Center, a third-generation nursery located in Nashville, Tennessee, and 20-time recipient for Nashville's Best Garden Center, offering the widest selection of new arrivals for fall, like specimen conifers, Japanese maples, and pansies in nearly every color. Open year-round, minutes from the heart of Nashville in beautiful Whites Creek, Tennessee. Browse their selection online anytime at batesnursery.com. Bates Nursery and Garden Center, beautifying Nashville since 1932.
All right, y'all ready to get back to some more questions?
Certainly.
Let's do it. Ewes got leggy and now being munched on by deer. Should we trim and keep the deer away?
They're obviously from New
Wild that
Jersey.
deers are
I would let them munch right now and then trim right before new growth, late February, early March. I mean, if you trim it back right now and they continue to munch on them, now generally, I mean, Texas is one of those plants that is considered toxic. Now, it may be that deer don't know that, and it doesn't affect them accordingly. But I know that cattle have been known to be killed by that. So if you happen to find a dead deer lying around and your ewes have been getting chewed on, that might be the connection. However, I would just not trim them right now. It's just, wait until you get closer to emergence of new growth. And then when that new growth emerges, then you've got really lush green growth. And there'll be so much else in the plant world growing at that time that maybe they'll be distracted and go to something else. So I would wait. I would not do it now. Let them chew it off if they want to,
They're
and not chew off deeper.
Aren't most of those very quick growing as well, David? Use
what some are and others not so much.
Okay.
It's like a dense yew. Yeah, it grows pretty fast and they get pretty big and wide. So and there are other types of yews that grow similarly. If it is like a Hicks yew or a pyramidal yew, which is upright or a pyramid in growth habit, they don't grow nearly as quickly. So I think that's where I would be more hesitant to trim them now. Just you've got 2 months essentially that you can still trim them in. So just be patient. It'll get here.
It'll be here. And then speaking of pruning stuff back, when do I give my boxwoods a severe cutback? They are old and have gotten out of control.
Well, that's a very similar answer there, except they're being a broadleaf plant. They may flush out slightly earlier or at a slightly different time. The main thing is you want to trim them before there's any signs of new growth. So you need to be watching the buds on the plant. If they begin to swell at all, you need to trim them immediately. And the reason that's so important is that on boxwood, given that they are comparatively slow growing plants, some varieties you only get maybe 2 to 3 inches of growth a year on. If you miss that first flush, you have missed most of your opportunity for perfecting the look of that boxwood. So if you will trim them just before there's any signs of new growth. You can shear them quite tight, even to where they look a little stubby. They'll flush out new growth all over, and then they'll be nearly perfect. So timing is important on those, but you have to be paying attention to your particular plants where they are growing to be able to monitor that in advance.
Final question of the morning. Is it too late to transplant a hydrangea? No,
No.
it is not.
Yeah.
I talked about transplanting my panicle. I had 3, transplanted those in the middle of winter. So now's the time.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm in total agreement with that. And with that time reference, we are now out of it. We've got to the end of the program. We'll thank everyone for tuning in today and enjoying this snow day. Make sure you go over to batesnursery.com and save 25% off everything on the website. So check it out.
Put out an APB on Austin. He'll be back next Saturday. But all points. So he's probably out playing with the kids and everything.
Probably
He's
so.
sweating.
Or wrangling them one.
Like herding kittens. So, but hey, folks, once again, we do appreciate you joining Gardening Inside Out every Saturday morning. Hey, we're available on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Don't forget about Twitch. Like and share us everywhere. I share it to Twitter every X every Saturday morning. But you got to follow me to do that, so don't worry about that. Anyhow, folks, we do appreciate you. We'll see you next Saturday morning from the Green Room Studios at Bates Nursery and Garden Center.
Thank you for tuning into the Gardening Inside Out podcast. If you're looking for more information or more from your hosts, don't forget that we have a live Saturday morning broadcast, 8 a.m. Central Time on YouTube and Facebook. You can also follow us on our Instagram channel. That's @Gardening Inside Out for more posts, reels, and in-depth dives to topics and things we've discussed on the show. If our content resonates with you, consider giving us a follow, like, and subscription on all of our social media pages. See you next time.